art helps us reflect and process what is happening to us as humans. And this is a deeply human experience that we are all going through at the same time.
Hello, one and all. I am so glad that you're with us today. My name is Andrew Racinos, and I am the president of the Tessitura Network, a nonprofit technology services and community company with a simple mission to advance the business of arts and culture. I am so excited for my chat today with Claire Spencer, Chief Executive of Arts Centre Melbourne. Claire has been Chief Executive of the Arts Centre, Australia's largest performing arts centre, since 2014, bringing a series of new initiatives to the centre and to the region. Prior to this role, she served in leadership roles at the Sydney Opera House, including COO and CFO, for more than a decade. Now, many of you here got to know Claire when she gave an inspiring and deeply personal talk at our Tessitura conference in 2018. The talk was called Stepping into the Void, and it addressed the difficult topic of mental health in the high-pressure world of performing arts. In this talk, Claire introduced many of us to a major initiative she helped to spearhead, the Arts Wellbeing Collective. Housed in the Arts Centre, it is a national and international effort to promote positive mental health and well-being in the performing arts industry. Today, during our chat, we'll be hearing from Claire about the latest critical work that they're doing in the age of COVID. Now, in January of this year, Claire was awarded a Member of the Order of Australia, one of the country's highest honors, in recognition for her significant service to arts administration and to the community. Now, I've been friends and colleagues with Claire for many years. The last time Claire and I were together in the same place was just over a year ago when she hosted me and several of my Tessitura colleagues at the Arts Centre to celebrate 10 years of partnership between our two companies. While I am forever amazed by the graciousness of our Tessitura community, it is the rare chief exec who goes so far as to throw a party for a technology partner complete with cake. But by now you know that Claire Spencer truly is a rare chief exec. So without any further ado, and happy to see each other for the first time since we shared a cake a year ago, I am pleased to welcome Claire Spencer.
Hi, Claire. Hi, Andrew. Good morning from Melbourne, rainy Melbourne.
Oh, well, afternoon from rainy Portland. So we have that.
United by Tessitura and the weather.
There you go. Well, it's wonderful to see your face, Claire. And, you know, we've known each other for a long time, but I actually wanted to start with something that I did not know about you until I was preparing for this talk, which is you are both a chartered accountant, which in the US we call a CPA, and you also have a master's degree in theology. And I'm trying to reconcile these two, you know, sort of the polar opposite kinds of, you know, you've got the order and the rigor of accounting, and then you've got this sort of the ethereal side of you know, the search for divinity. How do you think of those? How did those two come together, and have they shaped sort of what you do and how you approach your world?
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't know that about me. I thought everyone knew my kooky past. Look, I would love to be able to say it was, you know, a grand plan that I conceived at, you know, 15 and then executed with rigor, but it really wasn't. I, you know, mid-teens, knew I wanted to go to university, didn't know what I wanted to be. So, you know, I thought, well, I'll study something that I'm passionate about, that I'm interested in. And, you know, I love literature, I love history and philosophy. And, you know, theology was just a beautiful bundle of all of those things rolled in. So I had a wonderful 3 years at Cambridge studying that, and, you know, look back at those times really fondly, and learnt, I guess, you know, a lot about theology, but also learnt about the discipline of learning, about research, about how to communicate an argument. And they're things, you know, I still use in my day-to-day life. The accounting, though, was quite random. I will acknowledge that. So I graduated as a theology graduate, and, you know, back then in the, gosh, it would have been in the early 90s, not too many career paths for theologians. So I thought, well, I've got to do something. I'll go and work for one of those big accounting firms while I decide what I'm going to do with my life. And I started to work for Ernst & Young and qualified as a chartered accountant unexpectedly. I think that surprised everyone, myself included, that I actually qualified. But I loved it. I worked in the audit practice, so I was out and about all the time, meeting new people, looking at different businesses, really getting under the hood of many different businesses, from multinationals like Shell was one of my clients, but my favourite client was actually St Saviour's Priory in Hackney in East London, where the nuns, I used to do their audit every year, and the nuns used to keep their books in the big ledgers. They'd pray for me at the start of the audit, and I learned from that I loved working with people in diverse environments. And yeah, so these things happen, and then I left that and worked in telco, and it was telco that brought me to Australia. So maybe there was a path set out for me that I just didn't know it at the time. But it's funny looking back, you sort of feel all of those experiences have brought me to where I am today.
Yeah. Well, and it's a fascinating path, and I think that doing accountant, like auditing nuns, I mean, it feels like the start of a cartoon a little bit, but also, you think about bringing the nuts and bolts and P&Ls and that side of the world in conjunction with the sheer humanity and helping others that discipline is. I think perhaps you do have, clearly you do have a piece of that with you today. And I think about programs like the Arts Wellbeing Collective that you've spearheaded and have worked with many partners to bring about. And how that, on the one hand, has sort of a nuts and bolts aspect to it. You need, as a leader, you need to make sure your people are taken care of, but it's obviously deeply human as well. I wondered if you could give us an update on how things are going there. Obviously, this is a time of great, tremendous trial and tribulation for our industry. And how are things with the collective?
Yeah, look, it's been a very intense few weeks. I think, looking back to where the collective has come from since 2016, I'm really glad we started it when we did. It's been a very sobering few weeks, if I'm really honest. I think all of us, wherever we are in the world, know that there are huge challenges with mental health in the live performance sector. And that was before COVID-19 hit. So, talking to my team who are working at the coalface with this work, it's clear that COVID-19 has taken the whole sector into crisis at the same moment. And I think we're all very aware of of the financial challenges of shows stopping, venues closing, philanthropy pulling back, partnerships pulling back, and the impact that has on artists and everyone who works in the creative industries. But what we're seeing is a sort of a second wave of trauma that's coming through, and that's really impacting people's mental health. And it's, of course, part of it is due to the financial insecurity that so many people are facing at the moment. But it's also it's a separation from community and purpose. And it's that in itself is causing a trauma. Like, people are missing their tribe, they're missing connecting with an audience, they're missing connecting with their colleagues. So we're really deeply concerned about what the next months and years are going to look like. We think this will be a long road out financially, but also for the wellness of people who work in the sector. So we're really concerned.
Yeah, Are you, I mean, you speak a lot about togetherness when you talk about the work that you do, and obviously in performing arts, there's so much about that is about togetherness. Are there any, ways to reach out virtually right now? Are there resources that you're able to provide?
Yeah, the word together has become a bit of a beacon, hasn't it? I mean, it was in our brand's promise always, together experiences is what we do, but it's taken on a whole new connotation at the moment. So we're trying to stay connected, even if we can't be physically together. How can we stay connected? And I'll talk about that in the context of the Arts Wellbeing Collective first, and we can talk about other things later. But with the Arts Wellbeing Collective, we realised pretty early on that we needed to sort of pump out some resources for people to have to hand. And similarly to how the collective itself started, we prepared a lot of material for the Arts Centre Melbourne team themselves. And this was particularly relevant for, not so much for artists, but for people who work in the creative industries. So a lot of, resources available about working from home, for example. And we released another one last week that's sort of back to basics in self-care. So just reminding, and it may seem really self-evident, some of the material that's being prepared, and then it's being shared. Whoever wants to have access to it, it's there available for them. But what we found is in sort of the chaos and the shock and the deep uncertainty that this pandemic is throwing at all of us, it's really easy to forget the basics. And so, just reminding people what they can do to look after themselves in this time, whether that be, go outside, get some fresh air, eat properly, try and sleep regularly, stay off the booze as much as you can. It's those things. And, when I read the guide myself just before it was published, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'd actually forgotten a lot of these things, and I'm in this space all the time, and it's like, actually this was really needed. So having sort of some tools there that people can use has been really important, and that's always been one of the approaches that the Arts Wellbeing Collective takes. And I noticed on the slide that was just up there were some images around the collateral we prepared for touring, for example, how to tour and be well, how to get out of role at the end of a performance. So it's the same methodology, but just with very, very different content at the moment. The other thing that we have been doing is really encouraging people to seek help if they need it. And help seeking is something that we're not brilliant at as a sector. So we last year, I think it was in August of last year, we launched a helpline for anyone who works in the live performance sector in Australia, completely free. And it's what you would typically get if you work in an organisation. We call it an employee assistance program here in Australia. But for a lot of small companies, for a lot of independents, they don't have access to that kind of support. So we worked with another organisation that's very active in the contemporary music space in Australia called Support Act, and partnered on this new helpline. What is its point of difference is that it's staffed by psychologists who have an understanding of what the live performance sector is and what some of the challenges are that we face. Because the feedback we were getting was that generic helplines, you spend the first 20 minutes explaining what it means to be a stage manager and why you're stressed. So we felt it was really important, again, in the spirit of the Arts Wellbeing Collective, that it's something very tailored, that the helpline itself took on that philosophy as well. So we launched that last August, went really well, was ticking along nicely, being used Well, we've seen calls to the helpline just exponentially increase week on week. So it was strange. The first couple, 2 or 3 weeks in lockdown, it was pretty steady. We were like, that's quite strange. Why are we not seeing an immediate uptick? And talking to psychologists who we work with, who support us in our work in the Arts Wellbeing Collective, they said it's almost like we're in a bit of a honeymoon phase, if you can have that in a pandemic, where everyone's just kind of, resting, catching up on sleep, and just trying to process what's going on. And then it was like the enormity of it hit. And that's where we've seen the increase in calls to the helpline, and also a 4-fold increase in visits to the website where all of the resources are held. Wow. So, and the website is accessible to everyone internationally, artswellbeingcollective.com.au, and all of the resources are free. So we're really just encouraging as many people as we can to use those resources. Some of them are written specifically for the Arts Centre Melbourne team, as I mentioned, but they translate. They're very easily translatable, is the feedback that we're getting. So, and then the final piece we've been doing is really activating our mental health first aiders. So one of the other things that we've been doing since we spoke about the collective in Orlando was really training as many people in mental health first aid as we possibly can. And that we know that is paying dividends right now when people are really needing that support. So it doesn't make you a psychologist, but it by no means does it make you a psychologist, but it does allow you to support people when they're if they're having a mental health crisis. So that's been the feedback we're getting, is that has also been invaluable. So there's a lot going on. The team are really working incredibly hard at the moment.
Well, it's a testament to all of that work that you're helping to support this industry at this time. It's rough, and certainly I can understand. It's interesting, the honeymoon. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, as this drags on, it starts to become a different kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's I wanted to pivot a little bit, even though I know that pivot is one of your least favorite words.
Banned.
What's the other one? Unprecedented?
Unprecedented is banned. Pivot is banned.
Right. Pirouette is okay.
You can pirouette, yeah.
Okay. You've been interviewed quite a bit, and I've read some of your interviews on the topic of leadership and in this moment, leadership in crisis. I wanted to read a short excerpt of an email that was an unsolicited email I received from a member of your team when this person found out that you were going to be on this chat. So it might make you blush a little bit.
Oh, no.
To say that Claire has been an outstanding, phenomenal, inspirational, remarkable, and exceptional leader through this crisis doesn't even begin to describe how amazing she is.
Wow.
And I know I've met many of your team over the years and spent time talking with them and working with them. And I know that there's a great deal of love and respect for you that you obviously have worked hard on making happen. And I think that you talk a lot about people-led leadership. And I wondered if you could speak about this moment in time, everything that's happened in the last 6 to 8 weeks, and how you have thought about this and how you are leading right now.
Yeah, gosh, that's quite a long. How long have we got? So just, I guess, a couple of observations just up front. So I am a firm believer that leadership is a gift of those who follow you. And I'm quoting someone there, I can't remember who it is, but I've reflected on that a lot, and I truly think that doing what we do in this sector is an absolute gift, is an absolute privilege, and I never forget that. I think the last few weeks have probably challenged any leader who has a team and who feels a deep responsibility to that team. And there's no handbook for this. We spent the first 4 hours trying to find the global pandemic people leadership handbook. Doesn't exist. So we at the end of the day, we're people doing our best. But I think the thing that was probably most powerful for me and for all of the people leaders at the Arts Centre was that our values took on a new level of poignancy and depth at this time. So our values are community, care more, creativity, and leadership. And we wrote those values 5 years ago when we were sort of charting a new direction for Arts Centre Melbourne, and we never conceived for a second that there would be a global shutdown of the world. So it's been interesting to sort of reflect on those, and they've been so important because particularly in the first 4 weeks of the crisis, I'm sure a lot of people felt this. When there was so much uncertainty, we were a little bit behind in Australia, so in terms of the virus taking hold. And so we were watching what was happening in London, we were watching what was happening in New York, and we knew that something was going to happen, but we didn't know what. It wasn't clear, what the social restraints would be, what the whether we would have to shut down, whether we would be able to, at one point we were going to be operating at restricted capacity, but it really wasn't clear. And we had a lot of the audience members were frightened. A lot of the team were deeply concerned about their own health, being exposed to audiences coming in. And so you're sort of forced into a position where you're having to make decisions based on imperfect information and like zero data. So we sort of, one of the surprising things about this period is a rediscovery of instinct, and actually how you can rely on your instincts and you can't have data for everything. And I can't believe I'm saying this to you, Andrew, but that's okay. Sometimes you just have to make the call. And deciding to, close the Arts Centre on the Sunday morning, actually before we closed, was such a heartbreaking decision. I think for any of us who decide, that this is our sector and this is our passion, and closing your institution is just so against everything that we're sort of brought up and trained to deliver on. So it was a really heartbreaking moment. But the values, just bringing it back to the values, they really played very strongly in our minds and hearts at that time, because we knew we had a really important role to play in community protection. On a full night, our venues operate, we can have 30,000 people coming through the venue. So, we knew we had a really strong community responsibility to take a leadership position on that. And from our team point of view, it was about, a deep care and responsibility for their physical and emotional well-being as well. So it was those things that really led us in that early period. And then sort of when we came out of that initial 4 weeks, when we closed and people were all at home, but we'd sort of sorted our we'd resolved our financial security issues, we were able to then start thinking about, okay, what more can we do now during this period when we are closed? And then what can we do to start preparing for reopening? So we've sort of thrown everything up in the air, and everything's on the table, everything's being challenged, thought about, the team's working in a really different way. And who knows what we'll look like when we come out the other end of it. But, you know, we've recognised again, bringing it back to values, that this is a time for leadership. It's not a time to sort of sit passively and wait. So, yeah, I guess bringing it back to your question, that it's really been those values that have united us and given us the courage to sort of push through this utterly terrifying and devastating time.
Well, it's so interesting to hear that you came up with those values 5 years ago, and clearly they've been durable.
Yeah.
You know, I also think it's interesting that none of those values, if I'm remembering them correctly, have the word building in them, right? I mean,
no.
Known as, you know, you are literally a landmark, a community ghost light in the middle of Melbourne right now.
Yeah.
Without anyone being able to go into the place. I mean, how? So your values really seem to be the tendons that are holding you all together without your building. How are you thinking about sort of this moment where audiences can't assemble while being true to those values and to your mission?
Yeah, look, it does make you rethink your purpose when you're sort of wrenched from the place. But what look, there's our beautiful ghost light in Hamer Hall. Oh, it makes me so sad. But what it's made us really reflect on, well, how can we deliver on our purpose, which is enriching the lives of all Victorians? How can we deliver on that purpose if we are not in our facilities? So there are a couple of things we did early on. So we have a beautiful spire that sits on top of our main building. We're across 3 campuses, but on the main building where 3 of the theatres are, we have this beautiful spire that's quite a symbol of Melbourne. So you'll often see it in the, you know, the skyline shots. It's very, very distinctive. And we light it at night. It's lit every night. But we will light it in different colours for certain community events, and we've always done that. So it's become a bit of a symbol for the community. Oh, there it is. There's the spire. So that's its everyday colour. We call that Betty Blue, that colour, after one of our donors. So what we've done during the pandemic is we've lit it yellow, and we've done that for a couple of reasons. We're calling it our community ghost light. So it's there as a symbol of hope that we will return, which of course is there's a deep message of hope in any ghost light. But we're also using it as it represents safety. So, you know, ghost lights, as well as hope, they're there for safety, to make sure no one, you know, falls into the pit in the dark. So for us, it's a symbol of community safety while we're all locked up at the moment. It's a symbol of optimism, and it's also a really prominent symbol of thanks, deep thanks to all of our community who are working on the front line at the moment, in particularly, you know, nurses and doctors and police officers and all of that. So we felt it was really important to give the community this symbol, and it's been very well received, I have to say, and it will stay lit until we're able to come back together under the spire. The other thing we've done, like many organisations around the world, is we've looked to our digital capabilities, and you know, really thought about, well, if we can't bring people in to see content, how can we take content to them in their lounge room? And we had a tiny sort of archive of footage available, which has been shared, and we're sort of focusing on our items from our performing arts collection as well, which people have been very interested in. But we really wanted to do something that was of this time, and we really wanted to do something to get money into artists' pockets. So working with John Foreman, he's a very popular Australian conductor, composer, TV personality, we conceived of this thing called Arts Centre Melbourne's Big Night In with John Foreman. And basically that goes out once a week on a Wednesday, 7 p.m. Melbourne time. And it's a lovely show where there's music. We have Australian artists who are, based in London, darling. We've got a lot of the musical theatre community from Australia get involved. So there's music, there's a bit of chat, bit of conversation about how people are going. And then the sort of the climax of the show is this rather wonderful piece using the amazing musicians from the Aussie Pops Orchestra. There's some of them, and they're all at home like the rest of us. So we have this wonderful sort of created piece that that goes out at the end of the show. The reach that we've experienced through this has been just extraordinary. So we've had 2 episodes go out so far. The reach has been over 600,000 people, which is astonishing in Australia. That's astonishing. And we know from the feedback, it's just brought an enormous amount of joy to people. We incorporate a fundraising ask in there as well. So we're currently raising money for the Arts Wellbeing Collective. And we've been really heartened by, it's the biggest end of tax year campaign that we've ever done. And it's already raised over $120,000, I think it was, and we haven't even gone into the main push of the campaign yet. And but the thing, as well as the financial support, which has been so incredible, it's the sentiments that people are sharing with us as they're making their donations. And people talking about how much they love the Arts Centre, how much they can't wait to get back there, how much they appreciate, everyone who works in the sector, the, artists, techs, ticketing people. There's just been this really wonderful outpouring of sort of community support and connection for us. So staying connected to to our audiences is going to be really critical over this period. And part of it is delivering them beautiful product direct to their homes. So we're hoping that it will be part of our road out of here, that we will be able to slowly transition that format back into a venue. So we'll see how we go on that one. We've got to raise a bit of money to do it. So yeah, we'll see how we go.
Well, congratulations. I'm gonna tune in. Is it recorded? Can I tune in when it's a time that's slightly?
Yeah. If you go to the Arts Centre Melbourne website, so artscentremelbourne.com.au, go to the Big Night In page. The first 2 episodes are on there, so you can access those. And then the 3rd one will go to air tonight, 7 p.m. our time. Might be a bit early for you, Andrew, but then you'll be able to access it after. So I hope you enjoy it. There's some really terrific Australian talent on display in all of the episodes.
Well, I absolutely will. I have one more question, which I feel like in a sense you've answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Because so much of what you've shared today has been so foundational to the human spirit of the time that we're in. But in this time when the world is focused on safety and economic security and all of these really fundamental parts of human life, how do you see an arts center having relevance in the midst of all of that?
Such a good question, and one that we're really looking deeply into ourselves at the moment to answer that. I think it's complex, and I think it's layered, and I think it will evolve. So for us, at the moment we're a sign of hope and optimism, and I think people need that. I think this is tough now. We've all been in lockdown for a long time. We need some hope. I think people are missing being together. I think whilst you know, it's great to watch all of this digital content, but it's not the same as being in a venue with other people and having that collective experience. Oh, look at these beautiful pictures of performance with audiences. So I think there is, you know, people are, not everyone, but we're pretty sure that there's going to be a big part of our community who are desperate to get back and have a shared experience. So making sure we're ready when that happens. And then, of course, I think we mustn't forget the fact that art helps us reflect and process what is happening to us as humans. And this is a deeply human experience that we are all going through at the same time. And my hope is that, you know, the events that happen in our venues and other venues around the world will help us process that, will help us reflect back on this time deeply and think, well, what did we learn about ourselves as individuals, of course, but also as a community, and what are the bits of this that we want to take forward. You know, there's been extraordinary acts of kindness and generosity. How do we put that at the heart of the community that we want to rebuild on the other side of this? So I think that's yeah, I think if that's probably as a brief an answer as I can give on that at the moment. But I think, you know, it's for all of us to stop and reflect and say, well, what are we? Why are we here? Why are we important? And what's our role on the other side of this?
I think it's a fantastic answer. I think the fact that art reflects humanity is that'll stay with me. I think one other note in all of this is the fact that even as we aren't able to gather, you've come up with ways for folks to gather virtually as best they can. Seeing you react to the photos of the audiences, I find as the weeks go by, that becomes more and more moving and a little bit.
Oh, even the photo of you and I standing in such close proximity.
I know.
You know, I've realized I'm more of an extrovert than I realized I was, and I miss people, and just, yeah, it's tough.
Well, we do have some questions from our audience today, so we have a few minutes. So I have it here on my phone. Where is the Arts Centre on the topic of social distanced reduced capacity performances? Is this something that you're considering?
We most certainly are. And at the moment, we're contemplating reopening the venues reopening the buildings before we reopen the venues. We think it's going to be very difficult, particularly in the large venues, to meet the criteria that the government in Australia have set. So we're on a three-phase recovery plan at the moment, and even in the third stage, the maximum number of people you can have gather is 100. So, you know, in our large venues, in our 2,000 seat plus venues, that's a very difficult scenario to contemplate. So we're very much focused on, well, what are the experiences that we can give to people in the buildings, even if they can't go into the venue to see a show? So that's, we have a team, we call them our Together Again team, which is led by Bo Bagushin and Fiona Paletti, two of my amazing executives, and they're working through that at the moment. So, you know, we think it's going to be difficult to meet those criteria in our traditional format. So we're looking at other experiences where we can ensure that those kind of community safety measures are met.
Okay. So that's potentially performances in unusual spots or that sort of thing?
We're thinking outdoors, we're thinking small scale, possibly a combination of small audience with a broadcast attached to it, tours of the building. We have an amazing art collection, so we're thinking, well, how can we take this opportunity to really shine a light on that? We have a small gallery at the Arts Centre that's focused on Australian contemporary music. So we're thinking, how can we really activate that in a way that's safe? And then we have this very cool project which we've run in our concert hall before, actually, called Ghostly Machines, which is a kind of an installation using the flying system and stage equipment. And it's kind of the crew have choreographed it, and there's a special light show and sound show. It's beautiful. So we're thinking, well, that kind of thing would work perfectly. You can have people sort of walking through in smaller groups and still having an experience in a venue, though it may be very different from the experience that they're used to, and the experience that they're craving.
Yeah, well, that sounds very cool. Next question, and I think you might have already addressed this a bit, but to say it again, are Arts Wellbeing Collective materials available outside of Australia?
Yes, if you go to the Arts Wellbeing Collective website, which is artswellbeingcollective.com.au, you'll find all of the resources there, including the ones that we've produced for this period.
Great.
And you can also sign up to the e-newsletter, which you'll then get regular sort of injections of goodness into your inbox.
That's great. I mean, I loved what you said about getting back to basics. I've felt the same way you have, which is I'll get an email on mindfulness or something else, and almost every time I see it, I think, well, that sounds obvious, and yet I've completely forgotten about that recently. So.
Yeah. No, I had to front up to Kirsty Ritchie and Tracy Margison and Cam Greville, who run the Arts Wellbeing Collective, and say I really needed that guide. Thank you. The timing was perfect.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more question, which is kind of a big one for a short period of time, but we'll go for it. The Arts Centre has been planning a major upgrade. Is that still in the works?
Yes, it absolutely is. So it's being done in phases. The first phase actually starts in September, all being well. So we're replacing the flying system in the State Theatre, which is one of our large theatres. So miracle by miracle, the theatre gods are shining on us. The manufacture of that system is being done in Austria. And it's on track. We tested the winches last week, and they're now on the boat on their way to Melbourne. So yes, that's absolutely going ahead. The rest of the program is in design at the moment, and it was well advanced in design, particularly for the theatres building, which I mentioned. So yes, we're working very closely with government as to what that project might look like, and the role that it might play in reopening and stimulating of the economy. So we're full steam ahead, and the team who are working on this are still, foot to the floor on it. So it's exciting, very exciting.
Well, that is great. I'm so glad to hear it. We have come to the end of our time. So I wanted to thank you once again, Claire, for all of your insights and leadership at this time. And thank you for chatting with us, with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to spend time with you, Andrew. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Look forward to being able to do this in person.
Yay.
Also, you get to hear who our next guest is next week. Same time, actually. I will be meeting with Shannon Bennett, who is the Chief of Science at the California Academy of Sciences. And we are actually going to be talking about what we in arts and culture can learn about evolution from nature. So
how fascinating. I'll definitely be tuning in for that.
So again, Claire, thank you so much. Best to you and all of the team at Arts Centre Melbourne, and take good care. Bye-bye.
Bye.